This is Moonlit BL, where love lingers between the lines. Let the story begin. Act 1. The Sound of a Stranger. The fluorescent lights of Spin Cycle Oasis hummed with the weary resignation of a forgotten office building, casting a sickly yellow glow over rows of industrial washing machines. For Leo, a nocturnal creature by necessity and habit, the laundromat at 2 a.m. was a sanctuary. It was quiet, save for the rhythmic slosh and spin, a white noise symphony that usually lulled his perpetually overthinking mind. Tonight, however, the symphony had an unexpected, discordant note. A low, frustrated growl emanated from the far corner, near the recalcitrant dryer bank. Leo, meticulously folding a surprisingly soft bath towel, glanced up. A figure was hunched over dryer number 7, muttering curses under their breath. They wore a heavy, dark hoodie pulled so far forward it obscured most of their face, leaving only the shadow of a sharp jawline and the glint of narrowed eyes visible. A black K95 mask covered the rest, a common sight these days, even in the dead of night. Leo noted the surprisingly broad shoulders straining the fabric of the hoodie and the way a lock of dark, unruly hair escaped the hood, catching the harsh light. Seriously? Again? The figure grumbled, kicking the dryer's coin slot with a worn sneaker. The voice was a low, gravelly baritone, roughened by what sounded like exasperation and a touch of late-night fatigue. It was a nice voice, Leo thought idly, in the way a familiar, old leather armchair was nice. Comfortable, lived in, but certainly not the silken, resonant tones that usually filled his headphones. Leo clutched the folded towel to his chest. His social anxiety usually kept him rooted, silent, observing. But the sheer, universal frustration of a broken laundromat machine was a powerful equalizer. He had been there. Many times. Having trouble? Leo's voice, a soft tenor, sounded almost apologetic in the echoing space. The hooded figure straightened, turning slightly. Their eyes, a startling shade of hazel even in the dim light, fixed on Leo. There was a flicker of surprise, then something akin to weary amusement. Trouble? No, just enjoying a thrilling staring contest with this metal beast. I think it's winning. They gestured to the dryer, which remained stubbornly dark. Ate my last dollar. Leo empathized instantly. He reached into his own pocket, pulling out a small handful of quarters. I might have a few spares, if you want to try a different one. He held them out, the silver coins catching the light. The figure hesitated, those hazel eyes seeming to assess him for a moment. Then, a small, crinkling smile appeared at the corners of their eyes, even if the mask hid the rest. You're a lifesaver. Seriously, this load has my favorite worn-out t-shirt in it, and I'm pretty sure it's going to achieve sentience if it stays damp any longer. Leo chuckled, feeling a warmth spread through him at the shared moment of absurdity. I know the feeling. The horror of a perpetually damp sock. Exactly. The figure took the quarters, their fingers brushing Leo's briefly. They were warm and surprisingly calloused. I'm Julian, by the way, but everyone calls me Jules. Leo, he replied, feeling a pleasant flutter in his chest. Nice to meet you, Jules. Julian moved to the next dryer, inserting the quarters. This one hummed to life with a satisfying thunk. See? You're my good luck charm, Leo. What are you doing here at this ungodly hour? Freelance writer, Leo explained, gesturing vaguely. My deadlines often conspire with my insomnia to create this nocturnal rhythm. He left out the part about using Moonlit Ink BL and the character of Caspian to anchor himself through the long, lonely hours. It felt too personal to share with a stranger, even a kind one. Julian nodded, leaning against the now spinning dryer. I get that. Voice actor. My sessions are all over the place. Sometimes it's 9 a.m., sometimes it's 3 a.m. Makes a normal sleep schedule a myth. There was a wry, self-deprecating note in his voice that Leo found immediately charming. A voice actor? Leo's eyes widened slightly. That's fascinating. What kind of stuff do you do? Julian shrugged, a casual, almost dismissive gesture. Oh, you know, video games, commercials, a bit of animation, some audio dramas. He kept it vague, as he always did with new acquaintances. The last thing he wanted was for someone to recognize the voice and suddenly look at him differently. He just wanted to be Jules. Leo nodded, not pressing further. He respected the subtle privacy Julian seemed to project. They fell into a comfortable silence, punctuated by the rhythmic thrum of the machines. Leo returned to his folding, and Julian pulled out his phone, scrolling through something that made him occasionally huff out a quiet laugh. When Julian's dryer finished, he gathered his clothes, neatly folded. Thanks again, Leo. For the quarters and for the company. It beats talking to myself. Anytime, Leo said, genuinely meaning it. He felt lighter than he had in days. Julian gave a small wave, then pulled his hood tighter as he walked out, disappearing into the quiet street. Leo watched him go, a faint smile on his lips. He finally felt a flicker of sleepiness, a rare and precious gift. The next week, Leo found himself deliberately scheduling his laundry for the same late-night slot. Part of him felt a little foolish, a little stalkerish, but a larger part yearned for that fleeting connection again. And there he was, Julian, dryer number 5, earphones in, humming softly to himself. This time, he was maskless, revealing a surprisingly attractive face, sharp cheekbones, a strong nose, and a scattering of faint stubble. His lips, Leo noticed, had a natural, slightly sardonic curve. His eyes, however, still held that weary but intelligent glint. Jules, Leo ventured, a little shyly. Julian pulled out an earbud, a flash of recognition lighting his face. Leo, what are the odds? Or are you just trying to steal my lucky dryer? He grinned, a genuine, easy smile that transformed his features. Just a fellow night owl, Leo replied, feeling his cheeks warm. And my lint trap needed a spiritual cleansing. They quickly fell back into conversation. Julian was witty, a little sarcastic, but never unkind. He talked about the absurdities of his job, a particularly demanding client who insisted a medieval knight sound like a fast food mascot, and Leo found himself laughing more freely than he had in months. He talked about the frustrations of his own work, the endless revisions, the joy of finding the perfect turn of phrase. Julian listened, really listened, his hazel eyes attentive. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer unsolicited advice, just absorbed Leo's words. It was a rare and precious thing to be heard so completely. So, the knight who sounded like he was selling fries, Leo prompted, a week later. They had fallen into a pattern. Every Tuesday night, 2 a.m., spin cycle oasis. Their own quiet, fluorescent-lit world. Julian groaned dramatically. Don't even get me started. He wanted gravitas, but approachable, like he could slay a dragon, but also recommend a decent latte. I swear, some directors just throw darts at a mood board. He lowered his voice, doing a surprisingly spot-on, ridiculous imitation of the director's request, then slipped into an overly booming, cheerful night voice that was utterly unlike the subtle, nuanced vocal performance Leo admired in Caspian. Leo burst out laughing, leaning against the machine. That's amazing. You've got range. Julian shrugged, a casual dismissal. It's just noise. People pay for specific noises. He paused, looking at Leo, a small, thoughtful frown creasing his brow. You know, you're easy to talk to, Leo. Most people I meet these days, it's like they're waiting for me to do a voice, or they only want to talk about that one thing. He left the thing vague, but Leo understood. The public persona, the character, eclipsing the person. I just like talking to you, Jules, Leo confessed, feeling a blush creep up his neck. You're real. Julian's smile softened, losing its usual sardonic edge. Yeah, he said, his voice a little quieter. You too, Leo. You too. Leo walked home that night, the hum of the city a lullaby. He hadn't thought about Caspian or Moonlit Ink BL once. He had been completely present, completely engaged with Julian. The laundromat, once just a chore, had become something else entirely. A weekly anchor, a place where he wasn't just finding comfort in a fictional voice, but in the genuine, unvarnished presence of a new, real connection. He had no idea just how intertwined those two sources of comfort truly were. Act 2, the crossing of worlds. The comfort of the laundromat had begun to bleed into the rest of the week. Laundromat Tuesday was no longer just a chore. It was the axis upon which Leo's social life turned. But as their connection deepened, the shadows of their private lives began to lengthen, threatening to touch. The near miss. It happened over a shared bag of vending machine pretzels. The rhythmic thumping of a heavy load of jeans provided a steady backbeat to their conversation. You look exhausted today, Leo, Julian remarked, leaning his hip against a washer. He wasn't wearing his mask tonight, and the sight of his tired but genuine smile always made Leo's heart do a soft, clumsy roll. Deadlines catching up? Leo sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Worse, brain wouldn't shut off. I ended up pulling an all-nighter just listening to my comfort show to keep the intrusive thoughts at bay. Julian's interest peaked, a professional habit. Oh, what show? It's an audio drama called Moonlit Ink BL, Leo said, his voice softening with genuine affection. Have you heard of it? Julian felt his entire body turn to stone. The pretzel in his hand snapped in half. Moonlit Ink BL. His show. The project that had put his stage name, J. Rose, on the map. He took a slow, steadying breath, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. I think I've heard the name, Julian managed, his voice dropping into a raspy, careful register. The furthest thing from the polished, resonant tones of Caspian. What's it about? It's about this weary scholar knight, Caspian, wandering a dying world, Leo explained, his eyes lighting up. But it's not the plot that gets me. It's the voice actor, J. Rose. There's something about the way he speaks. It's like he's actually looking at you. Like he knows exactly how heavy the world feels, and he's telling you it's okay to sit down for a minute. Leo looked down at his hands, a shy smile playing on his lips. It sounds silly, but that voice, it makes me feel like I'm not alone in the middle of the night. It's the only thing that makes my apartment feel less empty. Julian felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent years in padded booths, obsessing over every syllable, every breath, trying to inject a sense of lived-in humanity into a fictional character. He'd won awards for it. But hearing it described like this, as a lifeline for the man sitting 3 feet away, felt like a heavy, sacred weight being placed on his shoulders. I should tell him, Julian thought, the truth burning behind his teeth. I should tell him right now. But then he looked at Leo, really looked at him. Leo wasn't looking at J. Rose, the untouchable talent. He was looking at Jules, the guy who shared pretzels and complained about dryer number 7. If Julian spoke the truth, that fragile, real-world connection would be swallowed by the fiction. He sounds like a lucky guy, Julian whispered. To have someone listen that closely. Deepening intimacy, the planetarium. A week later, they stepped out of their fluorescent bubble for their first real date. Julian had suggested the planetarium's late-night show, thinking the darkness would be a safety net. They sat in the plush, reclining seats as the dome above them dissolved into a digital recreation of the cosmos. The narrator's voice hummed through the speakers, but Julian wasn't listening. He was hyper-aware of Leo's hand resting on the armrest between them. Slowly, tentatively, Julian slid his hand over Leo's. Their fingers interlaced, palm to palm. Leo didn't pull away. Instead, he squeezed back, a small, contented sigh escaping him. It's beautiful, Leo whispered, gesturing to the swirling nebulae above. Yeah, Julian replied, his gaze fixed firmly on the silhouette of Leo's profile. Beautiful. In the quiet dark, Julian realized with a terrifying clarity that he was falling. Not for a fan, and not because of his career, but for Leo's quiet strength, his sharp observations about the world, and the way he made Julian feel like a person rather than a product. But the guilt was a physical ache. Every time Leo mentioned Caspian, which was often, as a new episode had just dropped, Julian felt like a fraud. He was letting Leo fall in love with a man who was keeping the biggest part of his life behind a curtain. He was a voice in the dark, even when he was standing right in front of him. The catalyst. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday, but not at the laundromat. Leo texted Julian a screenshot, the bubbles practically vibrating with excitement. Leo, Jules. Look. Image. An official graphic for Moonlit Ink BL, live. Leo. They're doing a live script reading in the city next month. The whole cast. I'll finally get to see J. Rose in person. I just managed to snag a front row seat. I'm actually shaking. Julian stared at the screen, his stomach dropping into his shoes. The live reading. It was a mandatory event for his contract. He couldn't skip it. He had pictured this event as a sea of faceless fans, a blurry crowd he could perform for and then retreat from. But now, Leo would be there. In the front row, Julian leaned his head against the cool glass of his bathroom mirror. In a few weeks, Leo would walk into a theater, look up at the stage, and realize that the man who had been holding his hand under the stars was the same man who had been whispering in his ear for years. He thought about the look of betrayal that might flash across Leo's face. He thought about the live, Caspian voice, the one he couldn't hide or rasp away, booming through the speakers. Damn it, Julian whispered to his reflection. He picked up his phone. He wanted to type, "Don't go. Please don't go. Let's stay in the laundromat where it's safe." Instead, he typed, "That's amazing, Leo. I'm happy for you. You deserve to see your hero." As he hit send, Julian felt like he was signing the death warrant for the only real thing he'd found in years. Act 3. The Unmasking. The atmosphere inside the Orpheum Theater was electric, a stark contrast to the sterile, quiet hum of the laundromat. Leo sat in seat A12, his heart performing a nervous staccato against his ribs. He clutched the program so tightly the edges were beginning to curl. Finally, he thought. The face behind the voice. Backstage, Julian stared at his reflection in the vanity mirror. He wasn't wearing his hoodie. He was dressed in a crisp, charcoal button-down, his hair styled away from his forehead. He looked like a professional. He looked like a stranger. 5 minutes, Jay rose, a stagehand called. Julian closed his eyes. He thought of Leo, sitting just a few feet away in the darkness. He thought of the way Leo had described Caspian as a lifeline. Today, Julian thought bitterly, "I'm going to cut that line." The reveal. The house lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd, thick with anticipation. The narrator took their place, and then, the main cast walked out to a thunderous standing ovation. Leo leaned forward, his breath hitching. He watched the actors take their seats behind music stands. His eyes scanned the line until they landed on the man in the center. The breath left Leo's lungs in a violent rush. The sharp jawline, the unruly dark hair, the way he leaned his hips slightly to the side. It was Jules. It was the guy from the laundromat. The guy who liked vending machine pretzels and complained about dryer number 7. No, Leo's mind recoiled. It can't be. It's a coincidence. Then, Julian leaned into the microphone. He didn't look at the audience. He looked at his script. He took a breath, a specific, deep inhale Leo had heard 1,000 times through his headphones. "The road is long, and the stars are indifferent to our suffering," Julian said. It wasn't the raspy, casual voice of Jules. It was Caspian. It was the rich, resonant, honey-dark baritone that had kept Leo's nightmares at bay for years. The authority in the tone, the precise cadence, the soul-deep weariness, it was all there. Leo felt a wave of nausea. Every memory of the last month replayed in high-speed distortion. Their conversations about the show. Julian asking why he liked the voice. The way Julian had listened to him confess his deepest vulnerabilities, knowing all along that he was the one Leo was talking about. Julian finally looked up. His eyes found Leo's in the front row. For a split second, the Caspian mask slipped, and the raw terror of Jules peeked through. Leo didn't wait for the end of the scene. He stood up, his chair clattering against the floor, and stumbled out of the row. He ignored the annoyed whispers of the crowd and burst through the exit doors into the cold night air. The fallout. For 3 days, Leo lived in a vacuum. He didn't answer texts. He didn't go to work. He sat in his apartment, the silence now feeling like a physical weight. Every time he tried to listen to the archive, he felt a surge of humiliation. He was mocking me, Leo thought, burying his face in his hands. He sat there and watched me gush about him like a pathetic fanboy. He was probably taking notes for his next performance. The intimacy they had shared, the hand-holding at the planetarium, the shared laughs, now felt like a scripted scene. Was any of it real? Or was Julian just method acting his way into Leo's life? A notification chirped on his phone. Another text from Julian. "Julian, Leo, please. I know how it looks. I know you're hurt. I'm not going to text you again, but I'm leaving a file in our shared drive. Please, just listen to it. Not as a fan, just as Leo." The grand gesture. Leo stared at the phone for an hour before curiosity finally overrode his hurt. He opened the link. It wasn't a high-quality studio recording. There was background noise, the distant sound of a siren, the hum of a refrigerator. Julian's voice came through, and it was different. It wasn't Caspian, and it wasn't the guarded Jules from the laundromat. It was cracked, hesitant, and entirely unpolished. "I didn't tell you because I was selfish, Leo," the recording began. "For years, I've been the voice. To my agent, to the fans, to the world. I'm a tool for their comfort. When I met you at the laundromat, you didn't know who I was. You like me because I gave you quarters. You like me because I made a joke about a dryer. There was a heavy pause, the sound of a ragged exhale. I was terrified that if I told you I was Caspian, I would lose Jules. I would become a character to you. I would become the voice again, and I'd lose the only person who looked at me and saw a man instead of a hero. I didn't pity you, Leo. I envied you. I envied how real you were. I'm sorry I turned our truth into a lie. I'm at the laundromat. I'll be here until they close. You don't have to come. But I'm not leaving until I've said this to your face. Resolution, the spin cycle. The spin cycle oasis was nearly empty at 2:30 a.m. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting the same yellow glow over the machines. Julian sat on top of a washer, his head hanging low. He looked smaller than he had on stage. He looked human. The bell above the door jingled. Julian looked up, his breath hitching. Leo stood there, looking tired, his eyes red-rimmed, but he was there. Leo walked over, stopping a few feet away. The silence stretched between them, no longer filled by the fictional wisdom of a night, but by the heavy reality of two people. Was the planetarium real? Leo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Julian stood up, stepping into Leo's space. He didn't use his actor voice. He spoke with the rasp of a man who hadn't slept in days. The planetarium was the most real I've felt in 5 years, Leo. I wasn't Caspian that night. I was just a guy who wanted to hold your hand. Leo looked at him, really looked at him. He saw the guilt, the hope, and the desperate vulnerability in Julian's hazel eyes. The voice that had been his comfort was just a part of the man. The man himself was messier, more complicated, and infinitely more valuable. Leo reached out, his fingers brushing the fabric of Julian's hoodie, the same old, dark hoodie from the first night. You're an idiot, Jules. Julian let out a shaky, relieved laugh, leaning his forehead against Leo's. I know. I'm really, really sorry. Don't do the voice, Leo murmured, closing the distance between them. I don't need the scholar knight. I just want the guy who owes me 4 quarters. Julian smiled, a real, sardonic, beautiful smile, and kissed him. There were no scripts, no microphones, and no audience. Just the rhythmic slosh of the washing machines and the sound of two hearts finally finding a common frequency. The fiction had brought them together, but the reality was the only thing that could make them stay.